Hey guys, welcome back to Break the Mould, episode 6. Today we're very excited to be joined by the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Don Iro, who is the CEO of the Allteks group. He's an entrepreneur, he's an incredibly smart individual, and we're actually, I suppose, blessed really to have you here on our podcast because Don's story is a fascinating one. I'm looking forward to diving straight in. So Don, thanks for joining us, and I think one of the first things I really want to ask you is, of course, the first thing I want to do is jump in a time machine, rewind. I don't know how many years we're going back, but I really want to get to the, I suppose, Genesis, chapter 1 of the story. Where does it all start for you, Don?
Firstly, thanks for having me here. I would say it's a pleasure. I've been seeing the previous episodes as well, so it's quite good. I wasn't quite sure what questions I was going to be asked today, but it's good to be here. In terms of where it all started, I think I can't quite pin a particular moment, but what I can say is I can paint a journey on how it's kind of came together. So I've had two lives, if you like. So I've had the first life in Nigeria, which is where I'm originally from, and I've got the life in the UK. Now there's bits in between Nigeria and the UK, and whilst in the UK, I spent a lot of time abroad as well, working and living as well. But where it all started for me, I think, was a lot more in Nigeria, right? So I studied there. I was a student at a university. I started my degree there, and it wasn't going anywhere. I was literally I was studying an electrical electronic engineering course, and in Nigeria you've got to be, and similar to any developing country, you've got to be one of these four things. You've got to be a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, and potentially things like architect or a surveyor or a professional. And I was very creative. I was one of these people who would think about where I really wanted to get to, draw it down in a piece of paper, put some steps towards getting to it, and actually make a story around it, right? But that wasn't cutting it, right? So I had my folks saying to me, you've got to go and do this, you've got to go and do that. So my parents were quite professional in their way as well. So I learned quite a lot from them. But the expectation was that I would go professional. So quite sporty, quite creative. And I was being pulled to be the leader or the captain in these groups as well. Yeah. So I was and I still am, an introvert, right? So I would stay at the back and try to shy away. But, someone who was, now I'm 6'4", but, in comparison to what I was then.
Quite tall in the back of the room.
Quite tall, right? So it was, there he is. So I was always picked to do these things, to lead and stuff like that. So for me, it was a natural calling. However, one of the things that I did face was the challenge of the environment. So irrespective of how successful I think the ecosystem was for me in Nigeria, it was quite limited. So I knew during the 5-year degree course, the 3 years for instance, I was no better than anyone who was doing their foundation in the UK. So what really changed it? Absolutely. So what really changed it for me was a point, a moment between 2003 and early 2004, late 2003 and early 2004, and it was a conversation with my brother. Now he's late, unfortunately, but he said to me, Don, you should go to the UK, and that was pretty much his words. He said you should go to the UK, and I thought, I had all this life here, right? I had family, friends, and, I was living the life. Yeah. Why would I want to leave that? But fast forward to 2004, I met the Solent University of Southampton Institute. They were doing a road show in Port Harcourt in Nigeria, in the South part.
Were they really? That's interesting.
There was quite a lot of universities that came out there. There was Glamorgan, there was Plymouth, there was a few others, right? So I walked around these booths. It's a bit like, the business show. You walk around different booths and you talk to them. And it was a Saturday. I put my details forward and they said to me, oh, you speak really good English. You're great at this and that. And I thought, well, that's fantastic. What course are you doing? Electronic engineering. So I said, oh, yeah, okay. So maybe we might get you an offer here. I thought, wow. So therein, I had a unconditional offer. And I thought, blimey, I've got a deal here.
Just on that though, Don. What was the at the time? What was the attraction to the UK? Like, what was it about the UK? You thought, oh, do you know what? Like, I'd like to go there. You know, and obviously your brother said to you, you have to go to the UK, but why?
Why? So family. So, you know, we've got a historical attachment to the UK. We've got family in London, in Scotland, everywhere. But I think it was more around the UK was a holiday destination for us, for instance. So it was more a where I could go to, where I could fit in really quickly. And I think we had all the options. You know, literally, you could go anywhere. I've got a cousin who's in Ukraine. Well, it's no longer in Ukraine now. They've left. But, you know, you could go anywhere, really. And for me, it was about going away and making something of my life, right?
Yeah.
And getting away from a shadow that was already existing for me, right? So I didn't want to fill in my folks' shoes. You know, I had my own life to chart. And being in the UK, obviously speaking English, which I think I had a good control of, would set me up in the right path. That was my view, and supported by my brother.
So did your parents think you were like mad for coming over?
Oh, they thought I was crazy. My mom didn't. So, you know, my mom always thought I was special. There's a picture I put up on LinkedIn, actually, that, you know, I said she was admiring me in that picture. She was looking at me, and I was sat with my sister and my brother. You know, she could have looked at anyone else, but it was me, you know, so that was the spotlight. But anyway, I say this, my mom always thinks very highly of me, and she wanted to, you know, she really wanted to support me through that. And the conversation I had with my dad about it, and my brother was there, and I was saying, I'm going to go to the UK, and he said, you're stupid, you shouldn't be thinking about that, you should go, you know, you could go anywhere else, not the UK, you could go to Ghana, for instance. And I thought, no, I'll go to the UK, I want to go to the UK. We had a really tense conversation.
Really?
But it was a conversation that needed to be had. Now, fast forward to today, I face a number of those sort of conversations in different guises, where there is a proposition, there is a different way of thinking about stuff, and you've got to take people along as well. And, you know, you've got to take away the emotion. At that point, I did say something. I stood up and I said, I'm going to go to the UK, I'm going to get married to an English woman, and I'll never come back.
And you did.
I never did. Yeah, so I did exactly that. And it wasn't by design, right?
Yeah.
But for me, that's what's important in that. And the lesson for me was that, you know, whatever you say, you know, there's power in what you say. You can speak things to existence. So you better be careful not to...
Speak things to existence.
Absolutely.
That's a quote.
Right?
We're going to take out this one.
Yeah. So I had a vision going back to the, you know, you asked me about how I started, how it all began for me, and the creativity there. I had a vision where I wanted my life to get to, you know, in the UK, what I really wanted it to look like, and the outcomes that I wanted to deliver. None of it was material. I didn't set up saying I wanted to make X amount of money. That wasn't the part I wanted to play. It was, what role did I want to play in the community? And I think going through that, I think I navigated my way through different roles, different opportunities, different scenarios, different challenges. And if I told you the challenges, we'll probably spend the whole day here. And ended up where I am now. So I think I'm only just halfway through the journey. I think there's quite a lot to go through. But
can we dig into what were those visions?
Yeah. So I wanted to. I think one of the things I really wanted to achieve. I don't know if I have achieved it yet, but it is to be able to change, I think, to change the perception, of an immigrant, right? Whilst I was in Nigeria, I didn't have that vision. But what I really, that vision in Nigeria was something else. Yeah. But it was to be successful, to create a path for myself. I'm an introvert, right? You might not notice it because I do socialize quite a lot, so I fought through that mold, but I always worked in my own head and worked through my own vision and tried to create something for myself. And even if it felt like it was secretive to people, you know, they go, oh, what's he thinking about? But I'd always got this plan that I was, you know, charging forward with. Different place in the UK, obviously the plan changed. So for me, the plan was, I was sat in rooms where obviously I'd broken the mold really quickly. Sorry for stealing that hashtag. Really early in my journey, in 2004. But what I realized was I was sat in rooms and sat in situations where I was probably the only person that looked like who I was in that place, you know. And
what do you mean by that?
So what I meant was, what I mean is pretty much, you know, I'm sat in a room, for instance, working in a large corporation, or, you know, studying in courses, and I was the only Nigerian black person.
Yeah.
Right.
How did that make you feel? Just like, was it?
So interestingly, I hadn't realised that it was any different. Now this was and I think this is probably one of the reasons why I'm probably an anomaly. I'm probably a crazy person, because this was one of the reasons why I think I've been successful in the world terms, in the sense that I never considered myself any less or any better. And I recall sitting in a room in a large corporation, one of the biggest corporations in the 90s, I think, if not the biggest corporation. And I was sat in one of their sister companies, which I was an employee of, in an open room office. All of the ground floor, there was only a couple of people who were black, right? And I'm sat there going, I don't see myself any different. But when I look in the mirror, look, it's not the mirror. They have transparent glass doors and everything else. You can see. You go, oh, it's different, right? But I never saw myself any different. And I will go into a room and I thought I actually had an equal voice. And actually, that was true. I did have an equal voice. But what I did find was, when I speak with the others, they told me things like, not necessarily in that organization, but things around their challenges, right? And I thought, for me, I thought, I'm not experiencing this. I'm not seeing these things.
What were those challenges? Just give examples.
An example was glass ceiling, for instance. Really? The first time I heard about the glass ceiling was in 2010, right? And it was in a passing conversation. This lady said to me, glass ceiling, and I thought, what is the glass ceiling? You know, and it occurred to me 2 years later. I had the chance 2 years later, so I was really busy and not even caring about that, to Google what it was, and I realized what it was. Now, ironically, at that same point, I think I had reached the glass ceiling in the role that I was in, and it all made sense. But perhaps, you know, there's two ways of looking at that, right? So you have people who would say, that's a glass ceiling. I'm not going to do that. That's the end. You know, I'm going to stay here and just keep my head down and work. Actually, I go, that's a glass ceiling. I'm going to smash it. Well, it's quite massive, right? Yeah. So I recognized that really, really quickly, and I went away. So I went and did something else. So I'll tell you exactly what it was. So I was lucky enough to be pulled. I think I did quite well. I think in hindsight, I was pulled into a program of works to help this company, who was a subsidiary of a larger corporation, to carve it up in preparation for a sale. There was lots of very, very bright people and experienced people as part of that team. I think it was a team of about 20 to 40 people, different work streams. I was responsible for the service aspect, the after sales aspect. So it was negotiating with suppliers like the likes of Microsoft and a supplier who was developing in Russia at the time for the business an Android operating system. So we had 6 months to deliver this stuff. It was hardcore stuff. On one side, so we were given this mandate: go away, run this program. We don't know about it. Just go and do it. Make it happen in 6 months' time. But in the daytime, we're actually working with the business with the Microsoft mandated operating system. So we had two lives, if you like, and I was operating in those two folds, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. I got a lot of experience doing that. But we delivered it and moved on, and everyone kind of moved on and got something else, and you know, but I was sat there going, what's the next step? And the next time I felt that way actually was in 2018, but I knew what to do then. However, back to what I was just saying. So in 2012, I thought, I've got to do something else now. I feel like I've got that experience. I could go and do something else. And I applied for a few roles in the company. It was 3 roles actually, and I did really well in the interviews. That's what I thought. And I got to the final stage, and I couldn't get the job, you know. And it all happened within the space of 3 months. It just felt like whenever I got to the point to clinch the role, it fell through. I don't know why. I think I do, but
What do you think you do, honestly?
Well, I think, look, there's two types of things.
It's an important conversation, I think.
Yeah, no,
actually.
absolutely. So absolutely, and I'll be brutally honest. I think, firstly, it could be that, and I'll tell you what I think it is. So I'll give you two scenarios. So the first one is that you get brought on board to help people be successful. Yeah. And in some cases, you might be really good at what you do, and you create a box for yourself. Yeah. So in that sense, you can't quite move on to something else because that's what you're known for. You might feel like you can do anything. You're the dogs and all that sort of stuff. But to the people who make the decision, you should be in that box. If you look at it objectively, you would say you can understand why a business will want you to be in a box, because that's the box that needs doing. The second part of it is, the second way to look at it is, actually, you know what? Maybe it wasn't for me. They could have just gone, you know what? Maybe we don't like him in that role, and actually, to be fair, maybe he's not able to do it. I don't know. I felt I could do it. I actually proved myself right within 12 months. So literally, I got up, left the business. I got another job before I left the business. And I leapt into the role that I actually applied for. And I was doing that role really well, and it was more for myself, actually, because
to prove to yourself, right?
Prove to myself I could do the job, right? And I recall when I got bounced 3 times in those roles, right? I walked out with my line manager, and decent guy, right? But he couldn't do anything about it, right? So
it obviously wasn't his decision.
It wasn't his decision. That was the guy I was working with at the time, and I was about to leave. Well, I was hoping to leave and go and work somewhere else in the business. He was supportive. I think he was supportive of that transition. But I remember just sat with him for 3 hours, just banging on about how difficult the whole process was and how frustrated I was, and I just poured it out, and he just listened, right? And if anything, him listening to me was very, very important for me, because I took that on board. And what I really did realize was, look, now I'm a business owner and an entrepreneur, a CEO. I could see it from both angles. It's difficult to see why I didn't get it 3 times, but it's easy to understand why I didn't get it the first time. Yeah. And I can understand why a business would do that. But going back to the point around glass ceiling, clearly there was a glass ceiling in that business, really simple, right? But that inspired me to go away, and help, and I think create a vision for people who hadn't. I think there's quite a lot of people who have broken the glass ceiling, but there's a lot that haven't, and a lot that don't see it because they don't see people like them going through that process.
So true.
So for me, the vision changed because I then realized actually coming to the UK was a blessing in itself, because the role I then now play in the UK is to help inspire people of similar backgrounds to me to push further and to go for those things that they would never dream of going for, because actually everything's in your mind. Literally you can achieve whatever, and this sounds cliche, whatever you conceive you can achieve.
No, I agree.
All that, and the moment you can visualize it and you can test it and taste it and smell it, you can find a way to get it right. And
I think what you just said there, like, that's clearly your mission.
Yeah.
Right, and I completely understand that. I completely get that. And do you think that as, like, I mean, I would personally describe it, I'm sure Chris would as well, someone who's broken through that glass ceiling, and it must be quite upsetting actually to see younger people with similar backgrounds who they kind of know there's a glass ceiling there, but they give up on trying to break through.
Yeah.
Because they feel like no, this is my place in the world.
Yeah.
What a painful thing, right?
It is, and it is and is not. right? Because I think representation is important. If you haven't seen something done before, and if you've got no clue how something looks, you can't achieve it. And actually, in some cases, you will talk yourself into accepting that it doesn't exist and you can't achieve it.
Yeah, I understand that.
So if someone's resolved to the fact that they can't do something, absolutely they can't do it. Yeah. If someone wants to do it, they can do it. But the catalyst for being able to do it and not do it is having an example to reference or to inspire you, right? For me, I had no choice than to succeed in the UK, because I can tell you for free, we're sat here with electricity 24/7. Yeah, where I lived and where I come from, you've got to have a generator. Yeah, you've got to have diesel. You've got to have all those things before you get the basic stuff, right? So when you spend all your time trying to get those basic things in place, what time have you got to really build your craft and to make yourself successful? So being here was a no-brainer. But what I then find is a lot of people who haven't experienced that hardship think what they see now is hardship. And I go, it's not quite that. But I have to accept the fact that they haven't seen that. So they're not necessarily going to appreciate what I do appreciate.
Did you think it gave you, like, because you're so right, you know, especially kind of people who are born over here and stuff, you know, they couldn't envisage having to have a generator latched onto a house or a street, and maybe having electricity a few times, like a few hours of the day if you're lucky, kind of thing. But do you think that gave you like some sort of real deep hunger and an emotional attachment to wanting to not just blast through something, but actually just achieve extraordinary things? Because I totally agree with you. I think the best entrepreneurs that I've met, usually there's one of two things. They've either had something traumatic in their life happen, which is just like lit a fire of something, a fire that just doesn't burn out, or something happened early on in childhood, or in terms of background and upbringing, etc., which also fired it. But it's a fire, if that makes sense. And if I'm being brutally honest, the ones who've had it pretty easy in life, who also wants to be entrepreneurial. Not all cases, don't get me wrong, there's some people who've really successful backgrounds and gone on to achieve great things, but a lot of the time they're lazier, I think. You know, so do you kind of A, agree with that, I suppose, and B, did it give you a bit of a fire?
Well, I think there's been quite some successful people, of successful families who have done quite well. I think the story is not quite clear with the likes of Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and Donald Trump and all those people who are, you know, quite successful in the world terms, who've made billions, but they actually had a very easy upbringing. You know, I actually think I had an easy upbringing as well. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, we didn't have food to eat and we didn't have water and I had to walk how many miles. You know, that's rubbish. It didn't happen. But I think for me, it was the desire, the burning desire to chart my own course, to be my own person, and that changed in different guises, right? When I moved to different roles and different geographies, it changed. But it was always about being my own self, creating my own stuff, and actually, whilst doing that, leaving people better off, people who were dependent on me. And actually, when I say dependence, not just my kids and my wife, but also people who were looking up to me and saying, you know, okay, I actually respect what you're doing. I don't want to disappoint those people, right? So what I've realized is going through that, building my own vision. A lot of people go, actually, you know, we're all tribes, right? We like to associate ourselves with things. They don't necessarily know what I've gone through, but they could go, actually, I could relate with that guy. I can see what he's doing, and, you know, I'll follow that. And I now recognize that actually by doing what I'm doing, I've got to be responsible to these people. But in terms of the fire and what really burns it for me, it's the desire not to be. There were 4 situations in my life that kept talking to me, right? And it's for me not to be in those positions again. And what I mean by that is what was clear, the common thread through those 4 situations was that I was absolutely broke. In those 4 situations, I only had about £5 with me, right? or something like that. One of it was in London. Yeah, I was literally in London and I didn't have enough money to get the ticket back to Southampton, right? So that was one. Another one was an interview. I couldn't actually fuel my vehicle to get to that interview. I got the job in that interview, and actually that was one of the turning points in my life. And when I was going up to it, I was being told you can't go to it. It's up in the Midlands. You can't go and do that. You're stupid to do it. And actually, it was the best decision ever. So, and two others, right? And you know, we're going to stay here till next week if we talk about those. But the point is, those were motivators, right? So what I've then realized is, okay, the guiding principle is to chart my own way, to create my own path, which meant actually there was no rule book, there was no playbook, and I was failing while I was going through it. But actually, the failures were motivators. So it was a catalyst for me to keep going, because I could see the next thing, because I knew where I was going, I knew what I wanted for my life. So when I saw those things appear, even if I had no way of getting to it, I'll ensure that I could convince someone, or I could find a way to make my way there. I mean, literally, a cousin of mine, bless him, because I remember being on the phone saying to him, literally, I've got no money, right? Could you give me a hand? Yeah. And he does a transfer to me, right? The point, I was just broke down on the train station, literally. And the point the first day I got my paycheck, I gave it doubled back to him, you know, literally. And I've got a lot of respect for that guy now. And you know, I call him every week and we talk about, you know, families kind of visit each other and all that sort of stuff. But he doesn't understand what he did for me. You know, he was just helping me out. But at that point, I was at rock bottom. I was literally rock bottom, but you wouldn't know that. And I think there's lots of scenarios, and it's in varying scales, right?
Yeah.
Where you invest so much of your time and your resources in your vision, and you know, at some point you realize, oh, I might have made a mistake. Yeah. But actually, at that point, you're very close to realizing your outcome. And if you change your course at that point, you lose everything.
Yeah.
And in the previous two scenarios, I lost everything I did because I changed course. But actually, my vision was to continue to be this person charting my way. So actually, I started again and I charted my way through it. But I could have also been quite successful if I had continued with the other two. So I think a journey is as much as you make it, right? But what's really important for go on.
It's really interesting that, because like there's some people who, I think, best way to word this, I think they like normal security, you know, they also the guaranteed 9 to 5 because I relate to that so much, because me and Chris, especially in the early years, you know, we didn't pay ourselves for how long? No. Like we would work all month, hard all month, just to pay the office rent. If we paid the office rent, we'd come in the next day, high five. Yeah. You know, we'd celebrate the fact that bills were paid. We weren't paid. Yeah. Our bills were paid. Yeah. We got through the month, right? Yeah. But it just shows that, like, there was no problem with that. Like, in the weirdest way possible. We weren't like, we weren't bothered. No. Because as long as we were going on that path, and we knew, as long as we still had the resource to stay on track to that path, we knew you had this belief, whether at the time people think you're deluded or not, you just know you're going to get there at some point. Yeah. And you just need to stay on the treadmill.
Yeah. But on that treadmill, you have plenty of failures along the way.
Of course you do.
And I'm a firm believer, you need to fail to succeed.
You have to fail.
You have to fail to succeed.
No, I actually think, you know, failure is success. Yeah. Yeah. So failure is...
It's fuel
so
for
if you
success.
think about it this way, 1 + 1 = 2. Yeah. It's fail plus fail equals success. If you take the lessons from that failure. Yeah. And actually, I think that going back to the comfort bit, to answer your question about people being comfortable and not being quite successful, those are the people who haven't necessarily thrown themselves out there and failed and turned it round. So when you think about the people who've done quite well, and they got a head start, you know, like the Bill Gates, and that's not what defined them. The head start didn't define them. What defined them is they went out, they made some really bold decisions, They failed along the way. They learned. They innovated. So actually, that head start doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But it's when you take the head start and you expect life to be about giving you a handout, and you do it, you fail, and then you go, oh, I'm going to go and do something else. And you don't want to fail safe, you go and get a job or whatever. I'm saying this from an entrepreneurial perspective.
Yeah.
Now, I know this is not a slating on people getting jobs. No, that's not what it's about. But it's charting that path and making those decisions that give you the opportunity to learn, and then taking those learnings and applying those is what really gives you the experience, what gives you the knowledge. That's what increases your worth and all that sort of stuff. I know people who have done stuff for 20 years, and I know people who have done stuff for 5 years. And you look at the people who've done it for 5 years, they've got more experience, or they've got more know-how than people who've done it for 20 years. The only difference there is that the quality of what they've done in 5 years has outweighed the quality of the other people in 20 years, because the other people were doing just one task. Yeah? These other people have failed quite well within 5 years, learnt a lot, thrown themselves into the deep end, and they've come out better for themselves. So,
and it's interesting you say that, because I totally agree. By the way, like there's the saying I always say, it's like years in business sometimes doesn't equal experience, because there's people who live the same year. Let's say someone's been in business 30 years. I know people who've been in business 30 years. They lived the same year 30 times, right? Like no growth.
Yeah.
But also as well, I think like in failure, there's pain.
There is.
There's emotional pain, and I think sometimes as well, I suppose essentially what you're saying there about, it depends how you interpret the failures. Are they lessons? Because some people fail and it's so painful that they never want to feel that traumatic experience again. Like whether it's an idea that went wrong or a business that went bust or something, it's so painful they just don't want to do it again. And then there's this other breed, I suppose, where somehow psychologically we take that emotional pain and we almost like convert it into diesel for the engine.
Yes.
And like it just gives us a bit more horsepower next time, right? Yeah. And I think that's where, like, and Chris, you said it's bang on, like the more failures we've had, every failure has been more fuel on the fire. It's almost like a fire. Every failure, you're putting wood on it, more wood, and at some point that fire just gets so big, and then you find yourself operating at levels which years ago you could not even picture yourself operating at that level. Whether it's, it's insane. It's insane.
Bring it back to if you go to the gym, you keep working out till you fail.
Yeah.
You keep failing until you can work out more and more and more.
Yeah.
And you're right. Using your gym analogy, you build your muscles when it actually aches a lot
right?
more.
Yeah.
And that's the point where you're taking it to the next level. When it gets really hard and difficult, you're just about to level up. Because I think you've got to get to that point. That's the ceiling. Yeah. You've got to get to that point, get uncomfortable, and accept it and learn from it. Because actually, in 5 years' time, you look back at that, and that must have been one of your best days in your life.
Yeah.
It certainly is for me. The most difficult times were the best times in my life.
Yeah.
And the moment, because I can sit here now and talk about that really difficult period, and at that point I was really angry about it, right? And I could have just done a Will Smith, right? But no, I didn't. But it was.
Get my wife's name.
Well, so it was probably get my name on that job.
Yeah.
But I can look back. I've got closure, and I actually realised that the lesson or what I learned from that particular process was a tool that I needed to use to acquire my own business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk that. So where did your business journey outside of employment? Where and how did that start?
So I've always had, and this is the bit, I've always had. I always had a knack for. I got bored very easily, right? And I always did 2 or 3 more things while I was working anyway, because I just couldn't do one thing, right? So I ended up running a few other things. So I ran a record label at the point. I ran a
record label.
Oh,
what? Don Iro Productions.
No, it was called Roller Dice Entertainment, actually.
What's it called?
Roller Dice Entertainment.
Nice.
Yeah, and we used to bring a lot of artists from Nigeria to the UK to perform, so on shows and all that sort of stuff. and we ran two sort of regions. So I was in the UK. I had my cousin and my brother running the Nigerian arm as well, and we used to do some gigs in Nigeria, bring people to Southampton. We did a mega jam in 90 Degrees years ago, and so I was doing all of that stuff whilst I was working. But what I realised was it was just a difficult gig for me geographically, because I was based in the UK, and actually the market in Nigeria is very, you need to be there to make a success of it. So that went really quickly. That was 30 million naira. It's not a lot of money in comparison to where you convert it to the UK pounds, but that went down the drain because we invested quite heavily in some artists, and it didn't yield the results that we expected. So that, coupled with the fact that I lost my brother around the same time, and he was the one representing the business in Nigeria, we shut the business down. I went back to my comfort zone, working in corporate, but it wasn't enough. I sensed that I had a lot more bandwidth to give, and I was going for a very senior role in large corporates, and I kept being told, not necessarily verbally, but through the experience I was getting, that you will get it, but you've got to work hard for it, and actually you've got to go away and get it.
Yeah.
Not in the south coast of England, go away. And I went abroad. I went to China. I spent years in China, working on a large program there. No one wanted to go to it, so I got it, and I enjoyed it. But what I learned was, coming back, a lot of those experiences were easily applicable, and actually gave me an edge against a lot of people who didn't go abroad to work. And there was a stint in the States, there was a stint in Taiwan as well, Taipei, and a few other bits and bobs. But I was picking up all of these things, and I worked across a whole business.
Though, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I worked across a whole business, from product inception all the way to after sales, R&D in between, program management, operations, the whole 9 yards. The only bit I hadn't worked in was finance, right? But I'd worked in everything else: how you visualize a product, create a product, build a marketing campaign around it, build a product proposition, pricing, all that sort of stuff. And then the after sales, when he breaks out there, how do you get it back, recall it, do a warranty repair, all those sort of things. So I had the toolbox for a business, but I was still scared of going out and setting up on my own, because it was a world that I wasn't comfortable going into, tax and being accountable to all of these regulators and all of these things that you could just go and do a job and get a huge salary. So I continued doing that, and I was a director level in a large corporation. Very comfortable. Delivered one of the biggest programs in 2018. Second time I felt the same way as I felt after that one in 2012 was in 2018, if you remember. I mentioned that. I delivered a significant program, and in 6 months, and it was everything I wanted it to be. But after delivering it, I felt the emptiest I could ever feel.
Really?
Yeah. It was the biggest program ever, but it was the most down moment in my life, the day it went live. Because I felt so empty, and I felt so down.
It's because in that 6 months, that balloon was just being inflated. We're getting there. And then it happens, and it's like, okay, done now.
Yeah. And you go, what was that about? It was just another job. Yeah. So I didn't feel like I was running a large portfolio, a large budget, a large team, but I didn't feel like I was impacting lives. I didn't feel like I was actually impacting outcomes. We were delivering
just
great stuff.
Project,
it was just another project, a large salary, a director. Yeah. Right. Okay. Had a company car and all that sort of stuff. It was fantastic. And one day I was going into work in Cannon Street in London, I was walking down the tunnel coming out of Bank. So you get into Waterloo, you get to Waterloo and City into Bank and walking out the tunnel. And I met a gentleman who, rewind to 2004, I met him in Southampton at the university. I bumped into this guy again. He was wearing a hooded jumper and jeans, a pair of jeans. And there was me wearing a suit and a tie and, very, very crisp and ironed and everything else. And I was going to the Walbrook building, which was in the centre of London, city of London. I was like, oh, that's you? Oh, he's toying. And he goes, oh, Don, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And anyway, so long story short, I said to him, do you want a job? Yeah? And he goes, no. He said, I've just come out of contract. He was doing a contract. I think he was doing it with Talk at the time. He'd just come off the contract. And he says, and I said, what are you going to do next? I was thinking, I'll help you. I'll help you. I'm connected. I'll help you. And he goes, I'm going to buy a business. I thought, what? And he said, yeah, I've just put an offer in to buy a business. I said, you must be mad. You're going to do the stuff that I am scared to do, right? I thought, and he said, no, he's doing it. So we exchanged numbers, and then we stayed in contact. He said, let's have a conversation, because actually at that point, he was buying a business. I was working in IT and digital, and I'd done that for years, and I'd got the operational experience and scale up of a business, etc. He's just entrepreneurial. He just wanted to buy this business and grow it, right? That was his vision, yeah? And we worked quite well. So it was a question of what role did I play in that. So this was in 2018. Yeah, so I joined Allteks in 2020 full-time as a CEO. Well, actually, no, as a consultant and then a CEO. And it was so I stayed on as an advisor from 2018 to then. And then I took a stake in the business and we merged all of our efforts. So I started up a consultancy actually in between all of this, because I had built quite a lot of contacts in the industry, and it made sense for me to go out there and sell my services as opposed to selling it for another smaller business, right? So I wanted to actually be in control of my destiny. And Toyin was in the picture at the time. So we said, right, we've got all of these things going. Why don't we bring it together? So we formed this superstructure of Allteks. And then COVID happened, right? So I think COVID was the test of everything, right?
Yeah.
Literally, if I say to people, if I had known COVID was going to happen, I probably would have gone back to my suit and tie, right? And my corporate job, because I would have been maybe safe, I don't know. But the fact that COVID did happen, I think it was a terrible thing to have happened. Obviously, it was a terrible. We're still struggling through it. But it was something that I think I needed to happen for me to go away and really dig deep into my archives of lessons and experiences, pain, and reflect on that, specifically the pain, understanding what people were going through, understanding what my staff were going through, what I needed to do, learning from what I didn't get from other leaders, and the tools of running and growing a business, learning from what I was exposed to, and I think it all came together, right? It was the right thing at the right time. Now, a few years before that, when people say to me, what did you really want to do as a career? Or where is your pinnacle? What's that role you want to have? I kept avoiding the CEO role. I kept saying, COO, or maybe a chief product officer. I just didn't want to take that leap. But everyone said to me, Don, you could do it, right? I knew I could do it. But I guess it was that at that point I thought to myself, look, I don't want the hassle of doing it. But actually, maybe I did. Because when the opportunity presented itself, it was the right place to be. And it was natural in that transition. So actually, what the lesson I took from that was, yes, you can have all these visions in your head and the outcome that you want to achieve. But actually, you don't really know what the extent of what you can do is. And sometimes it takes a partner, it takes a similar kind of individual or force outside of you to recognize and support you and ally to the next step, and you support that person as well. So it's complementary as well. And I think if you don't have that, then you're going to face that glass ceiling. If you do have that, people support you, sponsor you through those processes, and actually believe in you, because actually believing in someone is not necessarily hyping them up. It's just saying, look, I know that you can do this for me, right? And just stepping away from there, just getting away from their way to just go and do it. And I think I had that with Toyin, and I still do. And for both of us, the way we work is very, very unique, because Toyin doesn't do the operations. I run the business. He's got a vision, and he is quite good at business design and consulting. So he's doing a lot of that and the acquisitions as well of other businesses. And I run Allteks Group, and it works perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So what I took from that actually was, okay, so it works at that level. We've now got to replicate that across the business. The challenge has been, obviously, with COVID and everything else, is how do you balance that out?
Yeah.
How do you grow a business with the people, because people are the business, if there's so much instability? So that's the challenge we're going through at the moment. But in terms of my entrepreneurial and that decision, it was always at the back of my mind to do it. Opportunity presented itself.
Yeah.
I leapt forward, and actually best decision ever.
Yeah.
Best decision ever. But I don't think I would have done any of this stuff if I hadn't failed in all those other opportunities.
For sure.
Right? Because I think I would have made a similar mistake to what I did probably in 2010. Yeah. So.
When you go back home to Nigeria, and you bump into old friends, family, and stuff like that, like, are they in awe of what you've managed to achieve over here?
Yeah, I think so I went to a secondary school called, I'm just going to put this out there because they will probably be seeing this on YouTube. It's called the University Demonstration Secondary School, right? So I was class of 98, work it out, yeah? So,
88 was it?
98, steady. And I still stay in contact with them. So we're on a WhatsApp group and all that sort of stuff. And I try to stay as normal as possible because I think it's very important.
Yeah.
It's important for me as well because it helps me to tether myself to who I really am. Now, I know I've changed a lot. Things
Yeah.
have, I've got a family. I don't go out late anymore as much as I used to in the past. And all those things don't necessarily excite me anymore. But I'm that boy from sunny Nigeria, right? And I remember the day I got on the plane, Virgin Atlantic to Gatwick, right? But a lot's happened since then, and I pinch myself a lot to say, is this really you? Is this really you? And how did you do this? And actually, a lot of people say that to me as well. They go, I can't believe it, Don. This was you then, and this is you now. And some people don't quite understand how to approach the conversation. They feel uncomfortable doing it. So, yeah.
Really? What do you think it is?
Well, I think it's just a case of, things change, people change, right? And when you've not been in the same room with someone for years, and the priorities have changed, you don't know how to bring it back to, look, the conversations are different, right?
Yeah.
And they will be different because I'm talking about businesses, I'm talking about something else,
all that
acquisitions,
stuff, right? And
right?
I was like, what?
And there might be times for going out for a drink and all that sort of stuff. But there isn't anything that connects me with the mass as opposed to, other than, what connected us in the first place. So the schools,
yeah, I understand. I get that.
The groups, the age groups, and all that sort of stuff. So it's an uncomfortable transition. So I recognize that, and I don't fuel it because I made the decision to go away and do what I did. It could have gone one way or the other. It's gone the other, which is the better way, I think. And for me, it's really about when I go back and I meet them, and people say to me, you've done really well. It's really about how does that help them? What can they learn from it? And actually, is there anything I can help them with in their own journey? Because there's quite a lot of people who are still thinking about making the leap to the UK or somewhere else. For instance, are there things I can give to them? Now, you've got to also recognise that we are also a capitalist world as well, right? So you get equated, success is X amount of money, and that's not the case, yeah? Or success means give me a bit of this or give me a bit of that. And I would rather take someone to the pond, yeah, give them the tools to get their own fish, than actually giving them the fish all the time. Because what happens is, you give them the fish all the time, they become lazy. They don't make something for themselves. And actually, when you don't give them fish, you become the enemy, right? So actually, creating something for them where they can aspire to be, they can take the best bits or good bits about my journey. They could also learn from my exposure into other areas, etc. And maybe a few connections, they can find something for themselves. And they can create that and multiply. Yeah? And I think that's the kind of conversation I want to have with them.
Yeah.
And that's what I encourage with everyone. And I must also put out there's quite a lot of successful people as well from Nigeria who are living in Nigeria as well. So, I've got friends who are in the judiciary, I've got friends who are in the government, I've got friends who are, business owners, etc. But it's a different type of success, and I learn from them, they learn from me. And I think the way I operate here in the UK is not going to be applicable to how they operate in Nigeria. It's a totally different world. So what I can bring to the table is only going to be useful to them if they've got family who are in the UK, and that sort of stuff. So I think there's a lot to be learned.
That's fascinating. It really is. And did you feel like when you go back to Nigeria, because I completely empathise everything you said there, but do you sometimes feel like you have to change a little?
No. So I am.
Next question.
I am Britgerian. Yeah, that's what
Britgerian.
Yeah. So I am Nigerian and British. Now, what that means is, I think I've probably spent half of my life in both, largely in both areas or regions, and I can switch straight from a Nigerian twang to a British twang. Now, not necessarily because I feel I have to change, but when you want to connect with someone and talk to someone, you've got to talk to them in the way that they would understand it, right?
Yeah,
so there is no
it
point.
makes sense.
There is really no point. And I didn't do this naturally, but when you speak to someone who I've one of my friends from Nigeria, they'll tell you that I could be on the phone now speaking to someone in the UK, and they're in the car with me. Like a couple of my friends who came around and stayed with us over the summer a few years ago, that they're in the car with me, I'm driving, we're talking in Pidgin English, which is the Nigerian, like a patois type of twang, and then I switch over to English, and they go, how have you done that? I go, I don't know how I've done it. I really don't know how I've done it, but I recognise, having spent half of my life there and spent half of my life here, at an early age as well, I've just had this messed up way of taking these things and communicating, and it's not natural to them, but it's natural to me. So
that's fascinating.
Perhaps if
really
that's
is
the change, then yes, but I don't feel like I change when I do it. But they say to me, oh, the way you pronounce this is probably not the way they would pronounce it. So, okay. So, but I get that. But, yes, there are places I wouldn't go to that I used to go to in the past. But who would? You progress and you stop doing crazy things. But yes.
I love that. Final question for you then. It's like, so just listing that journey that you've been on from literally Nigeria, being told, no, you stay there. Then your brother said, no, you get on that flight, you go to the UK, flying over, corporate world, jump into your own business, etc., to where you are now. If you could jump in the time machine again and be at the airport over in Nigeria, Don Iro now, and you bumped into Don Iro who's about to get on that flight, taps him on the shoulder, what would you say to him?
I'll say to him, don't worry, it'll be absolutely fine. Yeah. I'll say to him, actually, you know what? It'll be the best decision you've ever made getting on that plane. Because I recall standing out there thinking, what the heck have you done? Yeah. And I landed in the UK about 6 a.m. the next day in Gatwick. And ironically, the song from Keane was playing, you know, that. I'm not going to try and sing it, but it says something like, everybody's changing and I don't.
Yeah.
And everything was really changing around me, right? And I didn't know why everything was changing, you know. But it was a very apt song to play at that time. And I just thought, Don, you've made a terrible mistake, but best thing ever. So I would have said to Don then, you know what, actually, don't worry about it. It'll be perfect. It'll work out well. And if I had the chance to do it again, I think I'll probably have done it 10 years earlier. Yeah. And I'll do it again. And, you know, and I'll encourage anyone who is thinking about breaking the mold to go abroad, to go away, you know, literally go away from your comfort zone, because what that forces you to do, I couldn't cook before I came to the UK, right? I had to learn in Chantry Hall.
Mrs. Iro might say you still can't.
Well, she still says I can't, right? But
watch this, Mrs. Iro. Can you let us know if you can cook?
But you know, I would have burnt water. Yeah. So, but I, you know, I've done quite well, you know, from that perspective. But I think, you know, you need to go away. You need to then be challenged and see what you can actually come up with. I think 99.9% of the time you actually surprise yourself with what you come out with. So the answer to that question is, I'll say to Don, look, great decision, mate. Go for it.
Guys, this podcast is called Break the Mould.
As been mentioned a couple of times.
Is there a better example of a story that fits into what we're trying to achieve here? That story is absolutely fantastic. It's brilliant. And that is exactly what the reason why this podcast is called Break the Mold. I know we keep mentioning it, is because this is all about breaking through those glass ceilings. And, you know, to whoever's watching this, you know, I don't care if you own a business or you know you're an entrepreneur at heart, but, you know, you might have had a few of the struggles that Don had, you know, do I take the leap and stuff like that. This is what it's all about. So, Don, thank you for sharing your story.
It's a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure having you on here. It really has. But obviously, Don runs an IT company here, Kent-based, but also office presence in Southampton now as well.
That's correct.
So, Don, what's the best way to get in touch with your company if someone wants a conversation with you?
Yeah, so actually, I didn't know I was going to plug in the company here. But so the website is www.allteks.co.uk. And I think, you know, you can reach out to me directly. I think I would welcome an email directly from anyone, and it's Don, so that's Delta Oscar November, at Allteks, which is Alpha Lima Lima Tango Echo Kilo Sierra .com. Yeah, Charlie Oscar Mother. Yeah.
Is it
.co.uk or .com?
Oh,
it's .co.uk.
.co.uk.
Don at Allteks.co.uk. But do not ask him to cook water because he'll burn it. Guys, thanks for joining us. Wherever you get your podcast, like, subscribe, share. Don, thank you for your time, and we'll see you next week. Cheers, guys.